Today's video will be showing the build and construction of the LHI 240mm FPV quadcopter frame kit found on Amazon. This particular kit consists of a 240mm Stretch X frame, 2306 2600 kV motors, 4 BL Heli S 35 amp 32-bit ESCs, an F3 omnibus flight controller, and a camera, video transmitter, propellers, antennas, etc. We begin by assembling each arm to the main frame using 2 screws. You can see the method I use here is to start with the bottom plate, sandwiching the arm between the main frame. Installing the first arm is the difficult part, getting the holes lined up. The other 4 arms assemble subsequently. As soon as each arm is attached to the frame, assemble each motor to the end of the arm, ensuring that the motor wires are pointed down the arm towards the main frame. With all 4 arms attached to the main frame, we can now begin assembling the power distribution board. Insert 4 screws into the 4 nylon standoffs that will support the power distribution board. We will now begin attaching the ESCs to the power distribution board via 4 negative and positive cable leads. You can see here I've pre-cut and pinned the leads used for attaching the ESCs to the power distribution board. The process of tinning these is very important to ensure proper solder connections. You can see here that I tin each positive and negative lead on the ESC as labeled on the unit with a positive and negative sign. I now begin connecting the pre-soldered ESCs to the power distribution board. Ensure that you trim the cables to length and leave enough room to make these connections adequately. Once all 4 ESCs are attached to the power distribution board, use the 2 large 18-gauge wires and solder them to the main battery leads on the power distribution board. An important step that I am using on this build to waterproof it, because I will be flying it in winter, is to use conformal coating, in this case silicon conformal coating, over all of the electronics, particularly the exposed units. You can see here I am layering the silicon conformal coating over the outside of the ESCs where they might contact water. ESCs are very susceptible to creating short circuits if exposed to mineral water, salt water, or even any rainwater. It is now time to begin wiring the Omnibus F3 flight controller. For this build, I will be using a small M8M GPS unit and a small FreeSky receiver, you can see on the right. It is the XM Plus model. Now that the GPS and receiver are soldered to the flight controller, and we've finished waterproofing the power distribution board and the ESCs with silicon conformal coating, it's time to solder the flight controller up to the motors. But first we're going to solder the motor to the ESCs. When I waterproofed these ESCs with the silicon conformal coating, I was careful not to cover the motor output pads, these 3 pads that I'm soldering to now. Once I'm done soldering the motor to the ESC, I'll go ahead and waterproof these 3 pads to remove any possibility of a short. As always, be careful to tin your pads well before soldering to them. I'm now going to solder the XT60 connector to the main battery leads. Always be sure to put the protector over the wires first before you install the connector. As you can see here, I'm using a vise to help support the XT60 because it's known to heat up during the soldering process. Now time to begin installing the FPV components, mainly the camera and video transmitter unit, and attaching them to power. Here I measure the camera and video transmitter lengths of wire needed to stretch from the front of the aircraft to the back, and now I strip the wires. With the silicon wires, you can easily strip them with your fingernail, as I just demonstrated. Although the smaller wires, it's important to use a utility knife or wire strippers to pull off the proper amount of shielding. This kit includes a battery strap and a nice adhesive layer that you can put on the top plate to secure the battery and keep it from sliding away. Ensure that you orient it the proper way and line it up with the cutouts in the top plate. With the build almost finished, I'm now going to run a zip tie over the video transmitter to secure it in position on the bottom plate, and then prepare to mount the top plate over, ensuring that the camera frame aligns with the slots in the nose of the top plate. It's now time to begin the beta flight setup, which you can reach at the link in the top right corner, and then install the propellers once we're finished. This kit includes a set of white propellers and black propellers. Always ensure that the orientation of the propeller and the motor spin direction is correct. The BL Heli suite can be used to change the direction of these motors using the ESCs without swapping any wires, which is very convenient. It is very important that you note that some of these motors, mainly the clockwise direction motors, have a counterclockwise tightening prop nut. This is crucial so that you don't over-tighten the motor when trying to remove the prop. The two counterclockwise motors have regular clockwise prop nuts. And that concludes this build.